The silent signal. Admiral Krex stood on the bridge of the Imperial dreadnought Sovereign's Wrath, his 6 arms crossed behind his chitinous back as he studied the holographic display before him. The bridge hummed with quiet efficiency, its dark surfaces illuminated by the pale blue glow of control panels. For 3 centuries, the Galactic Shattered Empire had maintained its iron grip over 12 star systems, and Krex had never encountered a problem his fleet couldn't solve with overwhelming force. The communication officer, a spindly Vorthak with translucent skin, approached with obvious nervousness. "Admiral, we're receiving strange transmissions from the Sol system. The signals are unusual." Krex's 4 amber eyes focused on the trembling subordinate. The Sol system housed a primitive species called humans, barely capable of interplanetary travel according to Imperial records. They posed no threat to the Empire's dominance and were scheduled for eventual integration or elimination, depending on their usefulness. "Define unusual, Officer Zell." "Sir, the signals appear to be directed at specific coordinates in deep space. They're using encryption methods we've never encountered before. Our linguists can't decipher the content, and our codebreakers are baffled by the mathematical structure." This information made Krex pause. The Empire's intelligence networks were among the most sophisticated in the galaxy. If they couldn't break a code from a primitive world, something was seriously wrong. "Show me the transmission logs." The holographic display shifted to show wave patterns and data streams. The signals were indeed complex, far more advanced than anything humans should have been capable of creating. They pulsed in regular intervals, suggesting some kind of coordinated communication network. Most troubling of all, they were directed toward the outer rim of the galaxy, where no known civilizations existed. "Have we detected any responses to these transmissions?" Krex asked. "That's the strange part, Admiral. We're picking up faint acknowledgement signals from coordinates that our star charts show as empty space. It's as if someone is talking back to them from the void." Krex felt an uncomfortable sensation in his primary stomach. In his long military career, he had learned to trust his instincts, and right now they were screaming that something was terribly wrong. "Prepare a reconnaissance fleet. I want 3 heavy cruisers and a full sensor array. We're going to pay our human friends a visit." Within hours, the Imperial fleet was assembled. The ships were sleek predators of space, their hulls bristling with weapons capable of reducing planets to ash. Krex commanded from the lead vessel, confident that whatever the humans were planning, Imperial might would crush it before it could develop into a real threat. The journey to Sol system took 2 standard days at maximum hyperspace velocity. As they approached the 3rd planet, Earth, Krex expected to find the usual signs of a developing civilization: orbital stations, primitive spacecraft, maybe some basic defensive satellites. Instead, his sensors detected something impossible. "Admiral," the navigation officer reported, his voice tight with confusion. "Earth is gone." "Explain gone, officer." "Sir, the planet is not in its orbital position. We're detecting massive gravitational disturbances where it should be, but no planetary mass. It's as if something picked up the entire world and moved it elsewhere." Krex rushed to the sensor station, his multiple limbs working furiously at the controls. The readings were clear and undeniable. Earth had vanished from its orbit, leaving behind only trace radiation and a slowly dissipating hyperspace signature. "Can you track the hyperspace trail?" "Yes, sir. The signature is unlike anything in our databases. The energy output required to move an entire planet would exceed the capabilities of most galactic civilizations." The trail lead. The implications hit Krex like a physical blow. Either someone had stolen Earth using technology beyond Imperial understanding, or the humans themselves possessed capabilities that made them far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Both possibilities were terrifying. Set course for the hyperspace trail. Maximum speed. The 3 Imperial cruisers plunged into hyperspace, following the energy signature left by whatever had moved Earth. The journey took them far from familiar star patterns, into regions of space where few had ventured. Krex studied every scrap of intelligence the Empire had on humanity during the trip, searching for clues they might have missed. The official reports painted humans as violent but technologically backward. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only recently and still relied on primitive chemical rockets for most of their space operations. Their military consisted of simple projectile weapons and basic energy shields. According to Imperial assessments, a single cruiser could conquer their entire civilization. But if that were true, how had they moved their entire planet? 3 days later, the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the trail's terminus. Krex's sensors immediately began scanning the surrounding space, searching for any sign of the missing world. What they found instead made his blood run cold. "Admiral," the sensor officer whispered, "you need to see this." The main display activated, showing what appeared to be empty space. But as the sensors adjusted their sensitivity, a massive structure began to materialize on the screen. It was easily 40 kilometers long and 15 kilometers wide, a construct so enormous that it dwarfed even the Empire's greatest space stations. "By the ancient void," someone whispered on the bridge. "What is that thing?" The structure was unlike anything in Imperial databases. Its hull was smooth and dark, almost organic in appearance, with sweeping curves that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Docking bays large enough to accommodate battleships dotted its surface, and weapon emplacements glowed with barely contained energy. Most unsettling of all, it was almost completely invisible to their sensors, hidden by stealth technology that made Imperial cloaking devices look primitive. "Life signs?" Krex demanded. "Massive, sir. I'm reading hundreds of thousands of biological signatures throughout the structure. And Admiral, I'm also detecting fleet formations inside those hangar bays. Lots of them." Before Krex could respond, his communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect Imperial standard, though with an accent he didn't recognize. "Imperial vessels, this is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Terran Deep Space Command vessel Prometheus. You are in violation of Terran space. State your intentions immediately." Terran, another word for human. Krex stared at the massive supercarrier floating before his small fleet and realized he had made a catastrophic error in judgment. "This is Admiral Krex of the Galactic Shattered Empire. We detected unusual activities in your system and came to investigate. We were unaware of your capabilities." "Admiral Krex, you and your ships will power down all weapons and prepare to be escorted to a secure docking bay. Any hostile actions will be met with immediate and overwhelming response. You have 30 seconds to comply." Krex looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were veterans of dozens of campaigns, hardened warriors who had never known defeat. But he could see the fear in their eyes as they stared at the massive human vessel. His tactical officer was running calculations on the weapon signatures they were detecting, and his expression grew more grim with each passing second. "Admiral," the tactical officer reported quietly, "their primary weapons appear to be some form of exotic matter cannon. Based on the energy readings, a single shot could vaporize one of our cruisers. They have over 200 such weapons aimed at us right now." 20 seconds remaining. Krex's mind raced through his options. He could fight, but his 3 ships against a supercarrier and whatever fleet lay hidden in its bays would be suicide. He could try to run, but his ships were surrounded by energy fields that felt uncomfortably like very sophisticated tractor beams. Or he could surrender and hope that humans were more merciful than the Empire had been to conquered species. "Stand down all weapons," he ordered. "Lower shields and prepare for escort duty." "Sir?" his first officer asked in disbelief. "You heard me. We've stumbled into something far beyond our understanding. Until we know more about what we're dealing with, discretion is the better part of valor." As soon as the Imperial weapons powered down, the space around them shimmered with previously invisible ships. Sleek human vessels materialized from nowhere, their hulls gleaming with advanced armor and bristling with weapons that looked like they belonged in the next millennium. They moved with precision and grace, forming an escort formation around the Imperial ships. "Imperial vessels, follow the designated flight path to Docking Bay 7. Any deviation will be considered a hostile act." Krex watched his sensors as they were guided toward the supercarrier. The closer they got, the more impressed and terrified he became. The human vessel wasn't just large, It was a masterpiece of engineering that incorporated technologies the Empire had only theorized about. Force field generators created atmospheric barriers in the docking bays. Gravity manipulation systems allowed ships to dock at any orientation. And the power signatures suggested energy sources that could fuel a small star. As his ship settled into the assigned docking bay, Krex saw something that made his heart skip a beat. Through the transparent aluminum walls of the bay, he could see row upon row of human warships, hundreds of them, each more advanced than his own vessel, and beyond them, through other transparent sections, he glimpsed what looked like entire cities within the Supercarrier's hull. "Admiral," his science officer reported in a shaken voice, "I'm detecting something else. Those aren't the only human ships here. My long-range sensors are picking up similar vessels throughout this region of space. Sir, I think we're looking at an entire human fleet." The docking bay filled with breathable atmosphere, and Krex saw armed humans approaching his ship. They moved with military precision, wearing armor that seemed to flow like liquid around their bodies. Their weapons were compact, but radiated energy signatures that suggested destructive power far beyond their size. "Admiral Krex," the voice of Captain Rodriguez came through the comm system. "You and your senior officers will disembark for debriefing. Your crews will remain aboard your vessels and will be treated according to standard prisoner protocols. I should mention that any attempt at escape or sabotage will result in the immediate destruction of your ships." Krex straightened his uniform and checked his ceremonial blade. Whatever happened next, he would face it with the dignity befitting an Imperial officer. But as he prepared to leave his ship and step into the unknown, one thought dominated his mind. How had the Empire so completely underestimated humanity? And more importantly, what did the humans plan to do with their hidden armada? The docking bay doors of his cruiser opened with a soft hiss, and Admiral Krex took his first step into a new and terrifying reality, where humans were no longer the primitive species the Empire had dismissed, but a force that could challenge the established order of the galaxy itself. The Empire's reckoning. The human escort led Admiral Krex and his officers through corridors that defied everything he thought he knew about starship design. The walls seemed to pulse with their own inner light, and the floor absorbed the sound of footsteps so completely that their passage was eerily silent. Advanced holographic displays showed star charts that included regions of space the Empire had never explored, marked with what appeared to be human colonies and military installations. Captain Elena Rodriguez waited for them in what humans apparently called a conference room, though it bore little resemblance to the austere meeting chambers aboard Imperial vessels. The walls displayed a three-dimensional view of local space, showing the positions of dozens of human ships that had previously been invisible to Imperial sensors. Rodriguez herself was smaller than Krex had expected, but her bearing spoke of absolute confidence and authority. "Admiral Krex," she said, gesturing to chairs that automatically adjusted to accommodate his alien physiology. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." Krex remained standing, his four eyes studying the human captain. She appeared young by Imperial standards, but her eyes held the wisdom of someone who had seen both war and peace. "Captain Rodriguez, I demand to know why the Empire's ships have been detained. We came here on a peaceful reconnaissance mission." "Peaceful reconnaissance," Rodriguez repeated, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Admiral, your government's files on humanity make for interesting reading, particularly the sections about our eventual conquest or elimination. Did you really think we wouldn't eventually discover how the Empire views species it considers primitive?" The words hit Krex like a physical blow. How could humans have accessed classified Imperial documents? The security around such information was supposedly impenetrable. "I don't know what you think you've learned, but the Empire maintains peaceful relations with all civilizations that demonstrate appropriate respect for galactic order." "Galactic order," Rodriguez said, her voice hardening. "Is that what you call the systematic conquest of 12 star systems? The enslavement of species that couldn't defend themselves? The planned extermination of populations that refused to submit?" Before Krex could respond, the conference room doors opened to admit another human. This one was older, with gray hair and wearing what appeared to be a scientist's uniform rather than military dress. He carried a datapad that projected holographic images as he approached. "Admiral," Rodriguez said, "I'd like you to meet Dr. Marcus Chen, our Chief Technology Officer. Dr. Chen, perhaps you could explain to our guest how we've been able to monitor Imperial communications for the past 50 years. Dr. Chen activated his datapad, and the room filled with intercepted Imperial transmissions. Krex heard his own voice discussing the potential invasion of human space, along with hundreds of other conversations between Imperial commanders planning the subjugation of primitive worlds. The Empire's mistake, Dr. Chen explained calmly, was assuming that a species capable of faster-than-light travel couldn't possibly have developed effective intelligence-gathering capabilities. Your communication protocols are actually quite sophisticated, but they rely on mathematical principles we discovered and discarded decades ago." Krex felt the foundations of his worldview crumbling. "You're saying you've been listening to Imperial communications for 50 years? That's impossible. Our encryption methods are tested against the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy." "Against the most advanced civilizations you know about," Rodriguez corrected. "Admiral, the Empire has been operating under several false assumptions. First, that technological development follows a predictable pattern. Second, that military might equals intelligence. And third, that a species can be judged by its most visible achievements." The holographic display changed to show the interior of the Supercarrier. Krex saw vast manufacturing bays where ships were being constructed using techniques that appeared to violate several laws of physics. Gardens that seemed to exist in impossible geometric configurations provided food and oxygen for the vessel's population. And everywhere, humans worked alongside artificial intelligences that made Imperial computer systems look primitive. "When we learned of the Empire's plans for humanity," Dr. Chen continued, "we faced a choice. We could develop conventional military forces and fight a hopeless war against a superior enemy, or we could use our advantages in ways the Empire wouldn't expect." "What advantages?" Krex asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. "Cooperation, primarily. The Empire rules through fear and dominance, which means your subject species provide only grudging compliance. Humanity developed through collaboration and mutual benefit. When we told our people what was coming, they responded not with panic, but with determination to protect our way of life." Rodriguez activated another display showing human colonies throughout the galaxy. Krex stared in amazement as he realized that humanity had established settlements and star systems the Empire had never even surveyed. They had built their civilization not through conquest, but through peaceful expansion and technological innovation. "The planet you knew as Earth was actually our least advanced world," Rodriguez explained. "We maintained it as a decoy, allowing the Empire to think it represented the peak of human achievement. Meanwhile, our real centers of civilization were developing technologies that would make us effectively invisible to Imperial sensors." "But the energy requirements," Krex protested. "Moving an entire planet through hyperspace would require power sources that don't exist." Dr. Chen smiled. "Admiral, you're thinking too small. We didn't move Earth through hyperspace. We moved it through dimensional space, using quantum manipulation techniques your physicists haven't even theorized yet. The power source is a controlled singularity that exists partially in our universe and partially in parallel dimensions." The technical explanation was beyond Krex's understanding, but the implications were clear. Humanity possessed technologies that made them effectively gods compared to the Empire's capabilities, and they had used those technologies not for conquest, but for protection. "What do you want?" Krex asked finally. "That," Rodriguez said, "depends entirely on what the Empire wants. We've been monitoring your government's response to our disappearance. Some factions are pushing for increased military action against what they see as an unknown threat. Others are beginning to question whether conquest is really the best approach to galactic relations." Before Krex could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the Supercarrier. The holographic displays shifted to show dozens of Imperial warships dropping out of hyperspace nearby. They were massive vessels, dreadnoughts and battlecruisers that represented the cream of the Empire's military might. "Admiral," Rodriguez said calmly, "it appears your government has decided to respond with force. The question is, will you stand with them, or will you help us prevent a war that will devastate both our civilizations?" Krex watched as the Imperial fleet formed attack formations, their weapons charging for battle. He could see the determination in their commanders' faces, the absolute certainty that Imperial might would triumph over any opposition. It was the same certainty he had felt when he first entered human space. But now he understood how wrong that certainty was. The humans hadn't just built a single supercarrier. They had constructed an entire hidden civilization. Their technologies didn't just surpass Imperial capabilities. They operated on principles the Empire couldn't even comprehend. And most importantly, they weren't interested in conquest or domination, but in protecting their way of life. "Captain Rodriguez," he said slowly, "what would you need from me to prevent this battle? Help us convince your fleet commander that humanity is not the enemy. Show him what you've learned about our true capabilities. And most importantly, help us establish a new relationship based on mutual respect rather than dominance and submission." Krex looked at his officers, seeing his own thoughts reflected in their faces. They had come here expecting to crush a primitive civilization, and instead found themselves face to face with beings who could reshape the very fabric of space. The Empire's way of ruling through fear and force had met its match in a species that ruled through innovation and cooperation. "I'll help," he said finally, "but I want your word that human forces will not fire first." "You have it," Rodriguez replied. "We've never started a war, Admiral. We only finish them." As communication channels opened between the supercarrier and the Imperial fleet, Krex prepared to deliver the most important message of his career. The galaxy was about to change, and he had a choice: be part of that change or be swept aside by it. Looking at the incredible achievements surrounding him, he realized there was really only one choice to make. The age of the Empire's unchallenged dominance was ending, and the age of cooperation was about to begin.